Welcome to KJ and Tony Love France. We are officially less than 3 days away from returning to Paris. Today is Sunday and we fly back to Paris on Wednesday, and we cannot be, I think, more excited.
I can't wait. The last time we were in Paris was just before the Olympics, and we consciously left before the Olympics started because we didn't want to deal with all the crowds and the craziness. And you might recall we were there for KJ's 60th birthday. And so I can't wait to go back.
Yes, and it was around this time that I started to think about wanting to do this video, because when I turned 60, I started to think more. I mean, it's a big birthday, 60, so I started to think about this desire that I have to want to age gracefully. And I started to think about the aches and pains that you start to experience when you get older, and the wrinkles, and a lot of other changes that occur that we are not going into in this video, but that also, you know, are a struggle for men and for women as we start to age.
And aging is a universal experience, but culturally it's different here from the way it is in France. And so that's what we're going to look at and compare.
We're also going to look at the differences between men and women, because there are also key differences in the way it's viewed as a man versus a woman, and also the way that we navigate it. And of course, you know, even though it's fun to think about, okay, aging gracefully, like who's better, USA or France? And we're certainly going to give you our opinion, sort of like the Olympics.
Well, and the fact that we are making it a little competitive speaks to culturally the fact that we're American.
Right, exactly. So it's really not about what we think, who is better. It's really about what you believe, and hopefully you can just take something from this video that might help you in your approach to aging, because I think there are definitely some things that we can learn from our French counterparts when it comes to aging. So US versus France, I don't know. We'll let you decide. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. Okay, so first we are going to talk about the difference between Americans and the French from an overall perspective. And then we're going to go into 5 key differences between the French and Americans, male versus females. So from an overall perspective, the overall philosophy from an American perspective is one of youthfulness, of anti-aging. You see anti-aging verbiage on everything from social media to beauty products. And so
it's almost like born of a fear of getting old.
Right.
And I have to believe it's a fear of ultimately dying, because if you look old, you must be in that direction. And I think it's a fear issue.
I also think that it's the way people who are older are treated, honestly, as an American versus the French, because Americans are definitely more, I think, fear-based, and this is what it states in the literature, because I've done a lot of research about this, the differences between French and Americans, male versus females, and there is a generalization. This is a generalization. It doesn't apply to, of course, everyone. But typically, Americans are much more fear-based, much more trying to hold on to youth, whereas the French more lean into it and embrace aging as a part of life. They have more of a tendency to embrace aging gracefully. And I think the way that older people are treated in France are with a greater degree of respect. So let's go into the 5 key differences that I found relative to aging, males versus females.
And we've said males versus females several times. That's not pitting them against each other. That's just a female perspective and a male perspective.
Right.
It's not. It's really more about the cultural differences. Right. What it's like in the U.S. compared to what it's like in France.
Right, because whether you're a male or a female, I don't think that males do it better versus females. Because,
and that's not what this is about.
Right, yeah. It's just about really looking at how can we learn from each other, whether that's males versus females, culture, comparing different cultures, so that we can gain some knowledge that will help to age more gracefully. Because for me, that's the end goal. The end goal is I want to be able to really embrace this aging process rather than approaching it from this place of fear or wanting to like somehow hold on to my youth. So let's go ahead and take a look at those key differences.
Let's go.
Okay, number one. Number one is that the French have a tendency to embrace natural beauty over things like makeup and or like surgical procedures. I think it's very common in the US to have surgical procedures, and although I'm sure there are plenty of French women who have had surgical procedures and get Botox and Dysport and all of those things, I think in general there's this emphasis of more natural beauty. And certainly I think that's the case whether you're young or old in France, that there's much more of an embrace of this like natural beauty.
And I think historically in the U.S. For men, there's been less of the surgical work on men than women. Not that it doesn't happen, it does happen.
Not that it doesn't exist.
But it happens more on women than men for a variety of different, it's not just the face, right? It's a lot of different parts of the body. And so we in the U.S. have kind of been taught, and taught may not be the right word.
Conditioned.
Conditioned is the right word, to believe that men age gracefully and gray hair looks good on a man and wrinkles look okay as long as they're not too bad, where that's completely different.
I don't know. I think that it's kind of unfair because
I'm not saying it's fair.
No. Just in general, I'm not even saying perspective wise. I'm saying that the truth is that a lot of men, not every man, but a lot of men look better as they age. Like, I love your gray hair. I think you look distinguished, whereas I attempted to grow my hair out to its natural gray color, and it was a major fail.
But that goes back to what is more common for men and women. There are men that dye their hair. I know males that dye their hair, but it's a much lower percentage than women. There are very few 60-year-old women who work who have not dyed their hair or do not regularly dye their hair. All you have to look at in our household is what I pay for hair care and what you pay for hair care. And if I said it was 10 times, if I said yours was 10 times more, that wouldn't be close, right?
There's a vast difference,
right?
Yes.
So it's just, I think we've been conditioned that men look better with gray hair than women do. And perhaps that's the fact that men, as they go through quote-unquote a midlife crisis, start viewing younger women. That's probably connected in here. So in order to not look older, you dye your hair, you do things to as far as getting a facelift or things like that, or maybe things to your body too. So
well, my first attempt at aging gracefully, let's just say trying to age gracefully, was trying to allow my hair to grow out naturally, to grow out my gray hair. And although there are women who look beautiful with their salt and pepper hair, I do not have the type of gray hair that is attractive. It just does not look good on me, right? So I don't want to, embrace aging gracefully to the degree where I'm going to walk around and look at myself in the mirror and be like, ugh, I do not like what I see, which is why, like, I dye my hair in the first place, because I think it looks better a certain color.
I think it's also a form of acceptance when you let your hair go gray. Right? You're accepting that you're 60 years old and not 40 or 35 anymore. But
I'm just not ready for that yet.
Yeah, and see, I've never... I think I once playfully dyed my hair before I even knew you. And I look so ridiculous. I think I shaved my head after that.
Maybe. Well, and that's why my hair is so short right now, because I kept cutting it in this attempt to grow my hair out, thinking, well, it'll go faster. It'll be a faster process. And I did go like several months, but then
Really?
I did. I went like 3 months. That's a long time.
I thought it was an hour and a half.
All right, let's move
Felt like an hour and a half.
Let's move on to number 2.
Okay.
Okay, number 2. Number 2 is kind of an extension of number 1, and that is that the French place more emphasis on inner beauty and confidence than on external beauty. And they believe that a woman who is confident and self-assured, that exudes a beauty that is attractive at any age, and that's what they seek to achieve more so than the external, is building this internal confidence, this internal beauty.
I think relative to that in the U.S., there's a push now for self-help, making yourself a better more inner beautiful person. Perhaps it's through meditation, mindfulness, just embracing spirituality,
positive mindset overall.
Yeah, and having positive habits in your life.
Yeah.
So I think in the U.S. it's more like that, and I think on this subject, men and women pretty much are equal. And again, it's not a comparison of men and women, but I think men and women's perspective on this subject is pretty much the same.
Right. I think that it's, pretty universal that it doesn't matter how you look, but if you have a negative mindset and you are a negative person and you're an unkind person, that it doesn't matter what you look like, that never looks appealing.
Right.
So I agree that this, this focus on the internal versus the external, I think that there are, I don't know, I would hate to say, I don't think that I agree with this philosophy or what I read, which is the French view this more so than Americans do, because I certainly think that there are plenty of Americans where they focus more on the internal beauty than the external.
My perspective is that in the U.S. it's going in that direction.
Right.
Where for the French it's been there for a long time.
You're probably right. All right, moving on to number 3. Okay, moving on to number 3. Number 3 difference is that the French place more of an emphasis on a healthy lifestyle, a healthy and balanced diet and lifestyle. And I think this is absolutely true.
I think it is true, and I think Americans are mocked almost in some parts of the world about how we are completely out of balance. We have much larger portions in our food. We're much more aggressive people. We're louder. You see executives here working into their mid-70s. That's much more common here than it is there. So we tend to do everything to extreme, and that creates obesity here. But there are also people who get into health kicks that do that to extreme. So if we're talking about balance, I think Americans struggle to be balanced.
Yes.
And the French do that much better. I think it's also from the perspective of work life, right? It's said in France that Americans live to work, and in France they work to live. In other words, there's a couple hours off for lunch. Yes, they work a little bit later in the day, but they don't work like dogs. They don't take their work on vacation. My whole career, I took my work on vacation. I still do. And so in France, they don't do that. Vacation is vacation. They're better at boundaries, I think, when it comes to work.
Yeah. And even retirement.
Yeah.
The
You might recall about 9 months ago, there was a big uproar in France because they raised the retirement age from 62. Well, wow, if we had retirement age at 62 and you got a pension that you were able to live on, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Right.
Well, they've had that this whole time in France. And so I think we are out of balance here. And it's not something that could ever change overnight. There's nothing that's going to change it overnight. It's just philosophically changing probably over generations.
And when I was looking up the differences, so I did a search relative to the differences between France and the U.S. females, France and the U.S. men. And when I did the search relative to the differences between France and the U.S. relative to men, a lot of the things that came up talked about healthcare. It talked about retirement pensions and social life, and a lot of like different aspects than females, which was more centered around looks and appearance. And this lifestyle, though, was one that was across the board.
Right. And one last thing about balance. If you have a job in France, it's very, very hard to get fired. There's a process of getting fired that might take months. I mean, if you remember in Emily in Paris, they joked about start the paperwork. By the time you finish the paperwork, I'll forget I was firing you.
Right.
That might have been an extreme joke, but there is some truth to that. So here we change jobs, for better opportunities. We keep seeing that better opportunity, and our aggression in getting ahead is so important that it creates an out of balance life.
Exactly. Okay, number 4. Number 4 is about the French being better at prioritizing self-care and cherishing life's simple pleasures and their ability to be in the moment. And I think that is a bit of an extension of what we were just talking about, right? That lifestyle balance.
And you talk about cherishing moments. One of the things that we were told when we were first talking about moving to France was, when you're in a restaurant, once the waiter's taken your order and brought your food, he's not going to come back to you. And in the U.S., we expect the waiter to come back every 10 minutes or so. Or do we want another drink? Do we want anything else? How are we enjoying our food? In France, it's different. It's more about us enjoying the moment, enjoying the conversation, enjoying the person we're with.
Yeah, this is one concept, one area that I truly believe the French are much better. Like number 3 and number 4, I think they are much better at embracing the moment and enjoying life's simple pleasures, like a meal, spending time with family, and not in this hurried state.
Right.
And I feel like part of this too for us personally is that we grew up in the Northeast, and so I grew up in New York, and of course being from New York, there's very much an emphasis on moving fast, talking fast, going fast. Everything's fast, fast, fast.
You even finished college early.
I did. And I remember when I moved down to Florida, one of the distinct differences in the culture in Florida when I first moved here was everyone seemed to go at such a slow pace, and it was so annoying to me at first. But now it's so much healthier to go at a slower pace.
I had the same experience growing up in Connecticut and commuting to New York for work and whatnot, and it was the same pace. And then I moved to Northwest Indiana for 8 years, and it's completely different there. Completely different. And you can almost feel the relaxedness. And then I came to Florida, and for a while I felt like I was on vacation all the time. But still, in France, they work to live, not live to work. And so the career is more a way to get to the, enjoy your life, as opposed to your career is enjoying
is your life.
Right.
Is your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we look forward to in moving to France, is being able to enjoy that slower paced lifestyle. And honestly, I think it was one of the challenges for me when we moved back in 2022, going from this crazy work pace that we were living, and then moving to France and adjusting to this slow paced lifestyle was a real challenge for me, but I'm ready to do it again. I'm ready to do it again. Okay, moving on to number 5. Okay, number 5, the final key difference that we're highlighting in this video. If you care to research it yourself, there's a lot of information out there relative to differences between the US and France relative to aging. But one of the major ones that was mentioned in the research that I did was mental health. That there are key differences, although I don't know that I agree with this overall. So it says that the French it's becoming less stigmatized in France than it used to be. But I think that is true of France and the U.S.
Yeah, I think for many years in the U.S. That men would not deal with their mental health. It would be stigmatized. If you did it, you didn't talk about it, because what if work would find out about it? And you would be thought a certain way. And I think that's changing. I think the fact that some famous people have come out publicly for caring for yourself, your mental health, and the fact that there's a lot of things, public service announcements on TV, I think mental health is much less stigmatized in the U.S. And if France is ahead here, I think that the U.S. is catching up rapidly.
Right. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is how common struggling with anxiety and or depression is in our population overall, right? But we can grow up in, talk about culture, US versus France. There's culture of family to family, right? There are certain families where the culture of that family is you don't talk about anything with anybody outside of the family. And so I think that in and of itself is starting to shift and change, especially with COVID and the fact that we now have access to mental health care via video, right? It used to be you have to go in to an office to meet with a therapist or a psychotherapist.
I think that the COVID changed mental health dramatically. It's one of the few good things about COVID is it changed it to acceptable mental health kind of situation. You don't have to go into an office anymore. There are still people that don't do it via video, but that's less and less. I think that many psychotherapists only do it via video. And there are many psychiatrists who only perhaps once a year see their patients in person, and then after that all the time is done via video. So I think it's much better in that perspective because COVID forced us into that situation.
Right. And when it comes to aging, I think it's more common for the older generation, let's say 50 and above, to experience mental health challenges like depression relative to the aging process and the changes that happen. I mean, I think as a woman, menopause alone is something that can create significant fluctuations in your body chemistry that can create challenges that maybe you're not used to experiencing.
And if you think about the medical world in general, we are living longer now. So therefore things happen, our brain starts to deteriorate where we might have been already dead in the past. So things like dementia and Alzheimer's happens to people because they've lived as long as they have. It's not kind of the cause of their death. It might ultimately be, but the fact is, they might have died sooner if there wasn't these health advances, whether it's in technology or ways to do surgery or transplants or things like that.
So I think one of the key differences that was mentioned, I think across the board, mental health in general is losing some of its stigma, and that more people are seeking to access mental health care. I think, though, that I agree that there is a difference between French and Americans when it comes to social support relative to males. This is where there is, I think, a distinct difference with males and females. I think females have a tendency to be better at social networks, like they have more of a tendency to have a support group, whereas males, because of the male tendency to be strong and really to handle things on your own, that in France, it's much more common for males to have a social support network.
Sure. And there's a word we haven't mentioned throughout this whole video, which applies here, which is ego. Right? With men, I think their ego comes into play, and they don't want to avail themselves of some of those things.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., yeah, for sure. And so they fall back on, let me sit in front of the TV and watch football or something like that, as opposed to going out into the world and being as part of a social support group.
Right. So that's a wrap for today's video. I think all in all, there's something that we can learn from both cultures, and we are just, again, really excited to be going back to our favorite city, Paris, in a few days, and we will be bringing you certainly new videos and footage. We have a lot of exciting things planned to do and to film while we're in Paris. If you are interested in joining our membership, we will be providing daily videos to our membership family. So if you'd like to be included in that, definitely click on that join button and check out those different options to become a member of the KJ and Tony Love France membership community.
Can't wait to go. Can't wait to send back videos.
So thank you for joining us today. We hope that you found something in this video that is beneficial for you and your aging. And hopefully you'll be able to age gracefully as we continue to try to age gracefully in front of you. So thanks again for joining us. See you next time. Au revoir.
Au revoir. So we wanted to talk to you about one other thing today. A few months ago, KJ bought something that generated a lot of interest. And people have been saying, where can I get this? Or how can I get this? And you may have noticed her necklace. It's a French franc that she ordered. And what is also available is a bracelet that is very similar to that. And so if you're interested in those, they are legitimate French francs from the old days before euro. And you can order them and get a 15% discount, right?
Yes.
And you want to tell people how to do that?
So just using the code KJ and Tony, you will get a 15% discount on any and all orders, not just your first order. So when you go to the website, which I'll put in the description, you will notice that the typical, they'll do a pop-up or they'll ask for your email address and they offer a 10% discount. Well, with the KJ and Tony code, you get a 15% discount. And I stumbled across this. We are not big promoters we don't do many, what do you call them? Partnerships with people, because sponsorships. I'm just not a person that feels comfortable selling things unless I really love the product and I've used the product, and that's rare. But this is one of those situations, I have to tell you, where I stumbled across this on Instagram and ordered it for myself. My mom saw it, she loved it. So I ordered one for her, and I contacted the company and said, listen, I love this necklace. I would love to share it on my YouTube channel. Do you think you would be willing to offer a discount? And they said yes. So that's Frenchie Collective, it's called, the company, and they have different styles, and they have different colors and styles in terms of the bracelet band, and it's adjustable, and it helps me to keep France close to my heart.
And why don't you repeat again what the code is for the discount?
KJ and Tony. So KJ and Tony. You put that in as the gift code or the discount code, and you will get 15% off.
Sounds good.